Yeah. Okay, so we're holding Perek Hamishi towards the end, 5th chapter. Very important two Mishnayot dealing with love and hatred, or Ahava and Machloket, love and division. Love is one of those topics or concepts that has been misunderstood for ages. You ask somebody what is love, you get who knows how many definitions. People don't really understand what it's all about, because it is complex. It's not something that you can easily explain. But when you read about it, especially if you read what the Torah has to say about it, what the Talmud has to say about it, you encounter various incidents in the Midrash and elsewhere that deals with this topic, then you get a feel for what is expected in a loving relationship. After all, we're talking about relationships, kesher, a connection between two individuals, whether it's a man or a woman, or whether between two friends, or even between partners. There's different kinds of relationships, and no one disagrees, of course. Everybody understands that relationships are at various levels. Parents with children are very, very close instinctively so. Nonetheless, in all types of relationships, there could be love, even if there's no intimacy involved. So it's important to understand. So the rabbis tell us that to begin with, we have to understand that kol ahava she'hi tluya bedavar, batel davar betela ahava. If a particular loving, supposedly loving relationship, what people think is love, is really hanging on or dependent on a particular factor that is bringing the people together, some factor, okay, physical factor that is, then once that factor is gone, the love will be gone, or the connection will be gone. So this is a type of love that is not a permanent connection, not a deep connection, and it's a love or a relationship that is relying on some outside factor to make it last. And the news, the bad news, I guess, is that, if you thought it would last, well, it won't last. And that's important to know, because it's not a real love. It's not a love that should be called even love. It's something else other than that. But people call it love because they feel some intense feeling towards someone or towards something. But they're really not judging the situation properly, and they're really not defining it right. They shouldn't be calling it love. But people misuse words and terms all the time. It is a connection, it is a relationship. The two people have something in common, but that something is not so strong, it's not powerful enough to make them stay together forever. Shlomo Melech, in order to accentuate this point even more, tells us, be careful. Sheker achen vehevel hayofi. Be careful with hen and yofi. If you see hen in a woman, hen is grace. It means she appeals to you. She's appealing. Hen is appealing. No doubt about it, for sure. That's why it's called hen. Hen is something. Yeah, but it's sheker. What that means is that it's misleading. Zemat'eh. It could mislead you to have poor judgment about the real individual that you want to form a relationship with, whether it's marriage, friendship, partnership, whatever. Sheker achen, be careful. Don't judge the individual just based on hen. Very appealing, very graceful, very sympathetic, their mannerisms, just nice, a nice person on the way you pick up good vibes. No, well, that could just be hen. And chen, it could be, it doesn't mean for sure, but it could be misleading. It could be that's something that you shouldn't base yourself on. What about the yofi? Yofi, beauty, external beauty, is attractive. It's just a fact. We're attracted to beautiful things. Now, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, I agree. What some people consider beauty, other people think is ugly. Okay, fine. But we're talking about the one who thinks it's beautiful. Still, that beauty, that external beauty, is superficial. Meaning that, not that it's meaningless, Not that it's worthless, it's just hevel. Hevel means that it by itself is vanity, is like vapor. The word hevel has two meanings. Hevel havalim, like Shlomo Melech says in Kohelet, a bunch of vanities, something that's vain, that's not worth pursuing. It's silly, it's physical, it's just, an insignificant thing. Hevel is also vapor. When you boil hot water, you see the vapor. What happens to that vapor? It dissipates. Well, yofi, external beauty, is something, but just remember, it will dissipate at some point in time. It could be with age, wrinkles, overweight, and if it's a man, he can go bald. So if the beauty was Mr. Macho, or I don't know if there's a Mrs. Macho, but Mrs. whatever, Miss Universe. If it was completely based on her looks, well, those looks don't last forever. And that includes plastic surgery, by the way. You can't get away with it completely. At some point, that beauty will disappear. Not entirely, but not exactly what it was. At 60, you're not like 20. And at 20, you're not like you were at 10 years old. Even though it says about Sarah that she was. She retained her beauty for many, many years. So anyway, so when it comes to beauty, it doesn't say don't look for that. I mean, you want to have something beautiful to look at, but that by itself is hevel. So it's interesting to note the difference. Chen is sheker, which is dangerous. Okay, but it's sheker. It could be misleading. Yofi by itself is not a lie, but it's hevel. If that's all you want, if that's all you're looking for, what a silly mistake to make. Because you want an intelligent person. If it's marriage, she's going to be the mother of your children. Is she qualified? Okay? Beauty by itself is shallow. And you have a lot of shallow people, unfortunately, superficial. There's not too much depth to them. They're not mature. They're not intelligent. They're not, you can't really maintain a conversation with them. There's a lot of issues. And there could be many, many differences of opinion. And that's what really matters, that you can agree. Well, how will the beauty help you with that? So that's why he says, be careful not to judge a person by those two. The Mishnah, in giving us an example of Ahava shetluya bedavar, is going to give us an example of Ahavat Amnon v'Tamar. So I'm continuing to read. If it's Ahava shetluya bedavar, batel davar betel ahava. Once that davar that's connecting the people is gone, the ahava, the love will be gone. She'ena tluya bedavar, however, if it does not depend on some factor, it is natural, it is real, and a betel anoram, there's no reason why it should ever cease to exist. Ezu ahavat tluya bedavar zu ahavat Amnon v'Tamar, the love of Amnon for Tamar, and I'm going to explain that is an example of a love that is really more infatuation than anything else. And she'ena tluya bedavar zu ahavat David Yonatan, the loving relationship between David and Yonatan, his friend. All right. So here the Mishnah, for some reason, chose, and there are other examples, to give us a unreal love, more of an infatuation. It's tluya bedavar of Amnon and Tamar. Who were Amnon and Tamar? They were both children of the same father, but of different mothers. And that's why it was not exactly incest for them to have had a relationship, but it was not really considered as well. There was nothing really between them. Tamar definitely had no interest in him at first. Amnon was infatuated. If you read the book, if you read the whole passage, that whole episode, you'll see, basically it's very clear that Amnon was infatuated. It was tava, it was physical drive. It was a passion, a lust. And because of that, it only lasted for a couple of minutes. After that, something incredible happens. He was so crazy about her, and he finally somehow got her involved. He was intimate with her by force, of course. She didn't like the whole idea, but he somehow forced it upon her. He had a whole plot on how to accomplish that, and he succeeded. But after that, in seeing her displeasure and seeing her opposition and sensing that she was not into it, he began to hate her. And the hate for her was even more intense than the love he had for her. So here we saw actually two very important ideas. We saw how this connection between two people that is based on the physical drive not only will not last, there's actually the potential for this transforming to hatred. Wow. Why should that happen? Okay, just let go. Fine. No more. We're not interested. It's mutual. Okay. But to hate someone, you just loved her. You claimed you loved her. What happened over here? There are many such examples in history. Many, many examples in the history books, in Tanakh, of infatuation. And the common denominator is that they don't last because they're not dependent on a lasting bond. That is not what is really being considered here. We want a bond forever. Only death will part us, There's no such an ideal. Because an ideal for people to be together for the rest of their lives is a spiritual idea. It's more spiritual than it is physical. And it involves giving to each other. It involves respect. Right? It involves mutual goals. It involves so much that you cannot make a quick determination when you're dating a girl, for example, if she's the one for you, because look how much is involved. You need Hashem to decide for you. Because sometimes it's very difficult to know. Is she the right one? She's attractive, she's appealing. Yeah, but we just said that that's not enough. You can't judge the book by its cover, right? You know that saying? So, here everybody wants a real loving relationship, at least most people do. Nevertheless, the rabbis give us an example of true life as it is, that in life there are many people who are not really pursuing a real loving relationship that requires sacrifice, that requires giving in, that requires giving to the other person. And what will bond them will be something fake, artificial, called ahava shetluya b'davar. So if it is not founded on a strong foundation, if it's not really motivated for the real reasons, then it won't last. So what do we see so far? That this possibly explains many of the divorces today. Now, it is possible that people are capable of loving. We haven't gotten to that, but we will get soon to the point of that we need to explain the fact that there are some people, for some reason, that are not capable of loving. Okay, we'll talk about that. But the vast majority should be, and they want it. At some point in their life, they get divorced because something interfered. Had it been real love from the beginning, not potential was always there. But had it been real love from the very beginning, they would never get divorced. Usually not. People make stupid mistakes in life. Yes, that's true. The man becomes an alcoholic or a gambler. The woman cheats. It could happen. A mistake. It was a mistake, an honest mistake. Okay, that can destroy a relationship. Mistakes. Yeah, mistakes. People make mistakes in business. People make mistakes in the way they handle relationships. Right? But if there are no major mistakes, there's no reason why a couple who really was able to get along very well should not be able to do so for the rest of their life. There will be, however, situations that will test their relationship. Test it. Challenge it. To see if they really can stick together. That's when true friends can be seen. True husband and wife that really care for it can be seen. How devoted will they be to each other despite the hardships and the challenges that they are facing. Not everybody can survive. But the stronger the relationship, the better the chances of survival. All right, so there are such relationships that are based more on passion, and therefore, no guarantee that they will last. On the contrary, they will probably not last. But why should it ever become a hatred? Why did Amnon hate her? Why should a passion turn to hatred? What does one thing have to do with another? It just comes to show us that what's underlying this passion is ego. Passion, don't think of therefore as passion as just a physical drive. Everybody has a physical drive, I hope so. It's instinct. But some people, beneath that physical drive is a strong ego. They are the conquistadores, as we would call them in Spanish. They want to conquer a woman. And there's even lessons on how to do that. You want to know how to conquer a woman? Here it is. Give you the tricks. 1, 2, 3, you get the woman that you want. Have you heard of that? I don't know if I've used the word right. Is it to conquer or is it something else? But you understand that, right? To conquer a woman. Well, what do you want? What do you want to do what do you mean conquer? The Torah says a man and a woman are equal. To conquer tells me that you're not thinking of a relationship that is based on equality. To conquer. She's mine, a possession. Yeah, there are some mentalities like that. There are some cultures like that. There are some individuals like that in every culture. To conquer, she's mine, my possession. No, that's not the Torah view of a loving relationship. But because some people have this in them, where is it coming from? You should know it's coming from an ego, a very, very strongly developed ego, where they want to satisfy their desires, they want to get what they want, they want to be on top of the situation, they want to be in control. So if you have that kind of a personality, and you combine that with a very, very strong lust or infatuation for something, and he doesn't get what he wants, it has to be that he didn't get what he wants completely, then he becomes mad. He becomes upset. So that intensity that he has between the passion and the ego takes the interest that he had in loving supposedly the other person to hate them. In other words, look how a person can switch, like a light switch, from on to off, just like that, because of ego, not getting what he wants. Ego is what stands in the way from having a strong relationship. If a person has his interests, only his interests in mind, and not the other person, then it can't last. Of course not. How could it last? Why should he? That's the way he is. He doesn't want to give in. In other words, it's not an easy relationship. And if the two have ego, forget it. It won't last more than the Sheva Brachot. Even to the end of the Sheva Brachot, it won't get. Yeah. So that's what it is. Partially, I didn't do a whole diagnostic here, or a whole psychological analysis of the person who begins to hate after just yesterday he supposedly loved. Okay, there may be other things underlying his personality, but there's definitely an ego problem. Now let's take a look at a second individual. This is a real sad one, tragic one. And you've heard about this one too. An individual who committed suicide because the girl of his dreams just dumped him. Have you heard about that? The girl of his dreams. It was in his dreams, in his mind day and night, and she dumped him, or she said no, or she whatever. Dump is a strong word. She didn't dump him. She said, I'm not interested. And it was going on for a while. It wasn't that she dumped him after one date. People can get over that. But imagine somebody was dating somebody for a long time, somebody was very well connected with someone for a while, and he and she, or both, thought that they were getting along and they had a potential for marriage or for a long-term relationship, and all of a sudden he or she, it could be either one, finds out that she's not interested. She doesn't want him anymore, for whatever reason. There have been cases of suicide. So let me ask you a question. Do you have an inkling, a feeling for why would somebody commit suicide? For something like that?
Rejection.
Okay, I can tell you learn psychology. That's the answer of a psychologist. Rejection. Nobody likes rejection. That's true. Nobody likes rejection. Unless You're very, very strong. In what way? Not in a regular human way. You have midata bitachon, faith in God, that everything is for the good. That's the only way you can overcome rejection. Right? So, yes, rejection is a problem. But it's not just rejection. It's more than that. You know, rejection means basically, okay, she didn't want me, but maybe there's another girl that will want me. Wait a minute. So why should the rejection be such a problem? Aren't there other girls just as nice or perhaps even better than this one that will not reject me? So you can't just blame rejection. Obviously, if a person is being rejected, he's disappointed. He feels terrible. What a letdown. You think he's going to just commit suicide? He's going to jump off the bridge. Just that. Oh, rejected. No. People who commit suicide have a bigger problem. You know, obviously, anybody who commits suicide for almost any reason, it's when, as we say in Hebrew, igiu maim ad nafesh. The waters have reached. You know, you're drowning. You don't see a way out. Whether it's financial or other big problems that just driving people crazy. In the Depression, right, the late 20s, people committed suicide. They thought that's it. The world's coming to an end. There's no way out of it. How am I going to recover? Shame is even worse than rejection. Shame is worse. Shame, some people can't deal with it. That's even more complex and more difficult, I believe, than rejection. But they are related, you can say, shame and rejection. Okay. So what's the problem?
Low self-esteem. They have low self-esteem.
The low self-esteem can contribute to that, of course. In Hebrew, it's called ahava nichzevet, disappointed love. What is their biggest problem of all? Not rejection, not shame, not low self-esteem. The biggest problem of all is that they have not yet understood what true love means. Had they understood what true love means, 100%, they would be able to deal with it a lot better. They should have said, oh, you don't want me? Thank God I know about it now and not after the chuppah. See? Somebody who has a better attitude, who understands what love is, will say that. Because what is true love? The most important ingredient of true love is mutuality. Yeah? When the two feel exactly the same about it. Well, guess what? She doesn't, or he doesn't. Well, then that's not it. It's not meant to be. If it was meant to be from heaven, which usually it is, it's only from heaven, then it would happen. But the fact that one of them doesn't want, and we're talking about adamantly does not want, then that's not it. It wasn't meant to be. Just go on with your life. This is not the one. And thank God I know it now. And I don't have to go out of my way to please the other person. Until I figure it out, that she or he is a fake. Or he's not real. It's got a problem. So part of the problem lies in the lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. That when you are dropped, it means this was not meant to be. This was not meant to continue. This is not for you. Then what was it? It could have been an imagination, a very fruitful imagination. It could have been passion, infatuation, physical chemistry. But it was not grounded. It was not realistic. If it would be realistic, then it would be able to survive even the greatest challenges. If this was real, then despite the ups and downs that we all have in life, moods, difficulties and challenges, a true relationship, a good relationship, a solid relationship, it lasts. It is able to weather the storms. So I can't blame this poor fellow completely because, as you mentioned, you're right. There are people who are weak with a low self-esteem. They don't take rejection so easily. If they're ashamed, they feel terrible for the whole next month or two. Yeah, people suffer. Not everybody's made of the same thing. However, that's where emunah and bitachon comes to our help. Without emunah and bitachon, we're lost. The Holocaust people who went through hell, if they would not have at the time emunah and bitachon, it would have been worse. Whether they survived or not, emunah and bitachon was crucial in how they went to their death. Yeah, some people went to their death knowing that this is for their good, this is Hashem who's doing this. They were confident that this is for some good reason. They were obviously nervous, they were anxious, they may have been sad for other reasons, their family members, uncertainty, right? It all depends on their upbringing. But everybody reacts differently because it also depends on their own personality and character. But with emunah and bitachon, it makes a world of a difference. A real kesher, a real good, solid connection, takes time to develop and to mature. And as we said before, it consists of ikhbatiyut, that one cares for the other, that one is prepared to give to the other, and mutual respect. These are the basic ingredients of a successful relationship. These things don't happen overnight. These things take time to develop. You only get to know your spouse after several years of living under the same roof and going through various experiences in life. And if you're still there for each other, well, that's a good sign. But that takes time. And what will you discover after this time? What has happened? What has happened subconsciously? You know, it's the same person. I mean, people grow older, you know, but it's more or less the same people. What has happened subconsciously that you feel calm, that you feel at ease, that you feel convinced that person is for me, and if I had to do it all over again, I would marry the same person? What convinces you? The secret is in the words that Shlomo Melech tells us in Mishlei. Powerful words. Kamayim hapanim lapanim ken lev ha'adam la'adam. In the same way that when you look at a body of water, the pool, the lake, and you see your reflection, kamayim hapanim lapanim, when you look at the water, you see your reflection, ken lev ha'adam la'adam. The same is true with the hearts of two individuals. They mirror each other. However you feel towards someone, they will feel exactly to the T towards you. On condition that it's not after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dates. It's after you've gotten to know each other. Because of the problem of infatuation, remember, and physical drive and other factors that blind people from seeing. But after you know each other, you've gotten used to each other, and it's not just physical, but it's more than that, and there's the respect and the giving and all that. And after a little while, it has settled and it has matured and grown. You will both have mutual feelings to each other. Either good or bad, by the way. It could be bad. I hate his guts. Right? So does she. Right? You know, he, she, whatever. If you don't like somebody, they don't like you. If you like somebody, they like you. If you're neutral, so are they. Now, even though people like each other, it does not mean that they're both as capable of doing as much for the other. There are people who are very, very giving. They'll walk 10 miles to see you in the hospital if they have to. On Shabbat, they can't take the car, right? The other person will not walk 10 miles. All right. Some people are more willing to do than the others. Some people love writing birthday cards, buying gifts, and decorating the house with balloons, and putting 120 candles, Bezrat Hashem, on the cake. 120, right? Right? And doing all kinds of things to make you happy. That's the way they are. They're jolly, they're giving, and what they have is they are demonstrative. Their personality is to be demonstrative of their love. Now let's take the husband. He loves his spouse intensely, just as much. He cares for her, respects her, does for her. But he's not demonstrative. He's actually quiet. He barely says a word during the day. Does that take away any of his love for her? No, not whatsoever. He's just not a demonstrative type. You see what I mean? You got to be careful not to judge a situation just because one is demonstrative, the other one is not, that there's no love between them. Because of what Shlomo Melech says. Kamayim apanim lapanim ken levad. It's not a secret. It's a fact of life. If you love someone, the other one loves you the same thing. You care about someone, the other one does so too. It can't be that one does and the other one does not. It's mutual. The feelings are mutual. The outward behavior cannot be the same because you have different personalities. One being demonstrative. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, let's go to eat and let's do this. I just want to enjoy my home. I want quiet atmosphere. I don't want other people looking at me. Whatever. There's different kinds of people. Right? Let's go on a cruise. Let's celebrate your 50th anniversary with inviting all your friends. Right? I don't want. I want a quiet evening with 2 candles. Right? In the garden. That's a different way of expressing your appreciation, your respect, your love. And you're not as demonstrative. That's okay. But the feelings are going to be mutual. That's a very important thing to know. So therefore, you want to know how somebody feels about you? How do you feel about them? The way you feel about them after a while is the way they feel about you. You like them, you feel okay with them, you have nothing against them. They probably like you too, they have nothing against you. When does it happen that there are misunderstandings between different people? When obviously you did something that was not clear. Or when people do not know each other very, very well. Well, when you don't know each other very, very well, I perceive that to mean that he doesn't like me. How do you know? Give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he meant something else. Go ask him. And it turns out that you were wrong. That's because you don't know him. So when we don't know people, there's room for suspicion, there's room for doubt, and so forth. You don't know. But if somebody's a good friend of yours, right? Somebody's a good friend of yours of many, many years. And he didn't call you for your birthday, or he didn't come to your bar mitzvah, your son's bar mitzvah or wedding. Does that mean that he doesn't like you anymore? No. Then why didn't he come? Well, who knows? There could be 100 reasons why he didn't come, or why he didn't call. Either he didn't think it was that important to call. Either he didn't have the time. It could be so many things. Does that mean he doesn't care for you? He loves you still. He loves you. It just is for whatever reason. Some people are hurt. Some people take it very personal because they don't understand what makes a relationship. A good relationship will always be good, more or less, will be a good relationship because the hearts are the ones communicating. The feelings are there. If I know somebody, how they feel about something, I don't have to question them in the future again, because I already know. You don't have to prove it to me again and again. It's fine, you've done it once, it's okay. For some people, especially for women, it's important to reassure them all the time. Still love you, still care for you. That's the way their nature is. I wish it wasn't like that, but what can we do? But that's the way it is. But the reality is that you shouldn't have to prove it. You've proven it once, you prove it from time to time. Occasionally you do things, that's enough. But some people like people to be very demonstrative. They want to see the hug, they want to see a gift, they want to see attention, they want to see more. Otherwise they say, oh, doesn't love me, doesn't care about me, only cares about himself. It's not true. It's totally not true, but that's the way it's perceived by people who are hungry for attention. And what can we do? We can't blame them for it because that's their nature. If people's nature is a hunger for attention and for love, they need it. What can we do? In that, homes of people that grew up in a very abusive home, they need special treatment. Sometimes you have to deal with people with silk gloves because they've been hurt in the past. What can we do? Yeah, some people need to go to specialists who can, deal with them and treat them nicely, politely, and show them that, the world is not against you. Don't have the wrong perceptions that you have. No, everybody's against me, they hate me, and nobody likes me. People think like that. Nobody likes me. Whoever told you that? It's a problem in perception. These people need help. So imagine if they're married to someone. Then that someone has to go out of his way to prove it to them, to take care of them. But it doesn't have to be like that because of what Shlomo Melech just said. People can read the minds of others and they're hard when it comes to feelings and affections. Yes, there's a feeling there in the air. However you feel towards them, that's the way they feel towards you. That really should be sufficient. Anyway, in the same way it is with people, relationship, the same it's true with emunah, with faith in the kiyum, in the observance of the mitzvot. There are some people, unfortunately, that grew up with Judaism in their home, but eventually turned their back against it. And some of them became our worst enemies. Our worst enemies, the Jews' worst enemies, Jews who turned against their own brethren. How could that be? Well, as we said before, if it's ahava shetluya bedavar, batel davar batel ahava. If it is a love that depends on some external factor, once the factor disappears, is gone, the love, the connection will cease to be. It could be that some Jews have been disappointed, have become disappointed, they didn't get where they want to in life. They thought, oh, I keep Shabbat, I keep everything, God is going to be nice to me. And they haven't made $1 million yet, you know. They say, oh, no, I haven't made money, $1 million. But thank God that you're healthy. Thank God that you could make a living. No, that's not enough. So a lot of people have perhaps become very disappointed in their life, not getting where they wanted to, where they anticipated, even though they're doing everything right. So it could be there's some room, it could be that there's some disappointment there. But to turn your back against your people, I mean, that's taking it to the extreme. Partially it has to do with psychological problems, I'm sure. So I'm sure. But besides that, anybody who's gone to that extreme, his roots at home have been very weak. Even though he grew up as a Jewish young man, the roots at the home were not that strong, they were weak. And if Judaism is diluted in the home, when the husband and wife do not show that much devotion, and so much, they don't care so much, they don't have any degree of self-sacrifice for the Torah mitzvot, at the most it is a parve kind of Judaism, then what is the child going to inherit? He's not going to have that kind of a dedication. He won't fight for it. He'll turn against it, obviously, because of a combination of other factors. Partially it could be that the other side is promising a high position. If you snitch on them, or even without snitching on them, they're promising him a high position if you become like them. In other words, you convert. So there could be various factors that drove some Jews away from their Jewish roots and enabled them to embrace, of course, other religions, to the point where they actually felt very comfortable in where they were, and began to plot against their brothers, either as a revenge for something that was done to them, or because of some disappointment, or some problem that they have. Regardless of what the reason, what triggered it, it's still the same. The foundation was very weak. The roots were not strong. And that enabled all kinds of weeds to grow. How do you have weeds growing on grass? Think about it. You don't take care of your grass. So you have weeds. Weeds grow, and weeds are damaging. They damage the rest of the grass. You can't tolerate, oh, go get a few weeds here and there. No. It's not just the weed. The weed can damage the other good grass, the healthy grass. So there are signs, by the way, there are signs that if a parent sees in a child these signs of potential weeds, you got to take care of it earlier than later. Everybody has free will, and obviously, you know, human beings are complex enough that we can't fathom all that's going on in their mind. But many times it's like we said, it's a combination of low self-esteem, like was mentioned earlier too, plus a feeling of disappointment or resentment, in conjunction with a very, very weak faith that says, this is fairy tales, you know, and all kinds of things. They could have been brainwashed. They could have absorbed all kinds of lashon hara, in other words, gossip that they've heard or picked up about Jews and that they actually believe. So, in other words, They pick up all kinds of ideas in the outside world that contaminates their mind, their way of thinking, and leads them to think all kinds of radical, extreme things that are contrary to our Torah. And if their nature is a vengeful nature, full of hatred and lack of tolerance, combine that with fanaticism, with lack of respect for one's tradition, and there you have somebody who's your enemy.
Disappointment. When
Yeah.
you get disappointed, they
Yeah.
really get
Yeah, no, but it's also part of the nature. You have people who are just gentle. They'll never hurt a soul. And usually they are not the ones that go to the other side anyway. So that's why I say it's usually a combination of factors. It has to be that the personality is a very, very aggressive individual. He doesn't have any qualms of hurting others. Imagine, okay, you disagree? Okay, go live your life the way you want. You want to bathe in the Jordan River? you know what I mean, you know? Go ahead, dip. Dip here, dip there, right? Why be an enemy? You know, what do you have against them? Let them live their life. So it's much more than just disagreement, right? It's a weed. The Torah calls him a shoresh poreh rosh vela'ana, which is a bad weed that grows sometimes. Okay, so this individual has become an enemy. Obviously, he's not our friend if he's an enemy. Between a husband and a wife who are already married, this could also develop. How could this develop? Because the individual who's backtracking, who's falling out of the relationship, is not a truthful individual. The midah of emet is one of the most important midot. Emet not just meaning truth, it means integrity. If a person lies to himself, if he's a liar, he's not a sincere person. He has a problem with that. He's just not genuine, a fake. He does things in a fake way, he cheats, right? Looks for loopholes all the time. He's not a very truthful person. I can guarantee it that he will never be able to be a reliable friend. Because his nature is to be not reliable. He's a cheater. He's a liar. So the friendship that he forms can never be 100% pure and strong. Never, 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 never. He's not capable of it. Can he fix himself? Of course he could fix himself, but not the way he is right now. The way he is right now, such an individual, man or woman, that lack integrity, and you can tell in their behavior that they have lied, that they're not sincere, that they fake certain behaviors or certain attitudes or things, they will never make a reliable, trustworthy friend. Will they be fun to be around? Yeah, maybe a little bit of fun to be around, but don't lend them any money. If you have big monies, you may not get it back. And even if you do get it back, it doesn't mean you can trust them in everything. That's just a fact of life. If there is falsity in the individual himself, in his own personality, then he cannot form a strong relationship that is built or based on mutual respect and giving and caring about each other. Impossible. So the Torah, in order to enable people to form good relationships, commands us, "Ve'afta l'reacha kamocha," love your friend as yourself, which really basically means whatever you don't want others to do to you, don't do unto them. No, care for others like you want them to care for you. Okay. What's the purpose of this mitzvah? There's two important ideas behind this mitzvah. The Torah gives us this mitzvah because it's a springboard towards the performance of other mitzvot, ben adam lam makom. If you observe this mitzvot, you will be able to eventually leap forward and be able to fulfill other mitzvot, especially between you and God. Number two, it's good advice. It's not only commanded, do yourself a favor and get a friend that you can love. In other words, true love. Why? Because of what the rabbis told us in Pirkei Avot, which we've learned already. K'neh lecha chaver. Acquire yourself a friend. For what reason? If you really love someone, you get close to someone, they will be able to criticize you in time of need, because you won't take criticism from anyone, and it's good to get criticized sometimes. You'll have somebody that will help you out in your time of need, hopefully. I mean, that he can help you, right? You'll have good company from somebody that you can trust 100%. You'll have somebody to turn to and to cry on his shoulder if you need to. You'll know you can count on somebody that's out there for you. There's so many benefits to having a solid, good friend. And guess what? Very few people in the world have that. Very few people can claim with certainty 100%, he's my 100% true good friend that I can rely on 100% all the time. It's rare. Why is it rare? Because people have not made enough of an effort to develop that kind of a relationship. Because in order to have that kind of a friend, you have to be a friend like that. You have to be completely reliable to earn that kind of a relationship too. So not everybody is like that. Well, they can't expect to find one like that. So why is this a springboard to other mitzvot? Because the rabbis tell us, "Mi shechaser lo be'ahavat re'im yeh lo chaser be'ahavat hamakom." The Torah tells us, "Ve'afta et Hashem Elokecha." You love your God. How can I love him if I don't see him? Well, if you love a friend like yourself, then you have the capability to love God too. First, form a loving relationship with a human being, and that is why that will be a springboard to loving Hashem, who you don't see. But if you don't develop it, anybody who doesn't have a good, solid friend that he loves, how could he develop a Haftat Hashem Elokecha? How could he love God? He doesn't even love a human being. So it's a springboard. Ve'afta le'acha kamocha is a springboard to the fulfillment of other mitzvot, including Ve'afta Hashem Elokecha. Those that are not there yet, many times it's because they love themselves too much. The person loves himself too much, and obviously he can't give to others. All right. So now that we've saw more or less the principles guiding this idea of true love, why is the Mishnah using an example of David and Yonatan as the positive relationship? We saw the opposite from Amnon and Tamar for the reasons that we've explained, because that was a typical case of infatuation. But what about Ahavat, David, Yonatan, which is platonic or altruistic, if you know what those words mean? It is pure. It is not physical. What about that? Why is that chosen? Okay, this is a little Kabbalistic, but the rabbis tell us that anytime there's a strong relationship between two men, very possibly it is because of the Shoresh HaNeshamot. They are from the same root of the soul. Just like a true husband and wife belong to the same root of the soul on a certain level, and that is why they are soulmates, the same is true with two men who may be very, very different. David, the future king of Israel, and Yonatan. They're very, very different families, different tribes. They really had nothing to do with each other. Why should they feel a closeness and affinity towards each other? Well, I'm going to give you the various reasons. Reason number one, possibly, depending on the intensity, is they could be from the same root of the soul. Anybody belonging to the same Shoresh HaNeshama will feel an affinity towards the other. Rabbis tell us, however, there are other things that bring people very close together, and one of them is the same name. Two people having the same name, Yitzchak, David, Eliyahu, Shmuel, right? Yakutiel, or whatever. That there's a certain degree of affinity between them. And then there's number three, which is, I think, one of the most important one of all, besides the root of the soul, and that is astrology. It's just a fact of life. That certain signs are more compatible with others. Very simple. Fact, proven over and over and over and over and over again all the time, that certain people with certain combinations, certain signs, will always get along better than with others. However, this is a big however with a capital H, all letters capital. Big however, that even if people are very closely in tune and are attracted and can get along, the most important criteria for a successful relationship is working on midot, If people don't work on their character, whether it's anger, laziness, giving, not being stingy, if people don't work on themselves, and we all have weaknesses, then even a potentially good relationship can go sour. It could be lacking, it could be missing out, because the people are not working on themselves. So they can get upset, and they can get angry and disappointed for shtuyot, for nonsense. You have to work on yourself. So if you work on yourself, which is a big investment, that coupled with compatibility and everything else makes for a successful relationship, no doubt whatsoever. Guaranteed. Then you have people who are not so compatible, but they're very good natured, but with midot, so they'll get along. They may not be happy 100%, because imagine one is a shlump, if you know what that is. A shlump is somebody who's scattered. His house is always messy, and they don't mind. That's the way they are. And the other one is so meticulous and so particular and so neat. It's World War III in the house. It could be. One cannot deal with a situation that is messy. The other one says, what's the big deal? Come on. The house is not a museum, I can just imagine that. You have to find a compromise. What's a compromise? Good compromise is get a maid. If the other person is not clean, and you want to maintain the peace, ceasefire, right? And get a maid. You can't. Why? Why get a maid? I'm going to change them. No, you're not. You're going to bring chaos and machloket. You can't change people if they don't want to change. And even if they want to change, they can't change. They can get used to a little bit being differently, but to change, no. People cannot change completely. That doesn't excuse them. I didn't say that should excuse them. People will always be what they are, but they can train themselves. Train, yes. You can train yourself to do things a little bit differently, and somehow make the situation a little bit more mellow, acceptable, but not change completely. But you can find a compromise. You can find a solution. Yeah, solutions, there are several. One of them is get a maid for this particular situation. Yeah, if you want peace. Anyway, so working on the midot is of very, very critical importance. All right, the second part of the Mishnah, or I should say actually the second Mishnah, is called מחלוקת שהיא לשם שמיים סופה להתקיים, שאין לה לשם שמיים אין סופה להתקיים. Now we're dealing with מחלוקת, division. We spoke about love, what about division? If division is for the sake of heaven, the differences of opinion that people are arguing about is for the sake of heaven, it will endure. Something good will come out of that division, out of those exchanges of differences of opinions. V'she'en l'shem shamayim, if it's not for the sake of heaven, en sofa litkayem, it will not last, it will not endure, nothing good will come out of it. Eizui machloket she l'shem shamayim, what's a good example of a machloket that is for the sake of heaven? A good machloket, zu machloket Hillel v'Shamai, the famous machlokot that Hillel and Shammai had in the Gemara. V'she'en l'shem shamayim, what's an example of a machloket, a division, an argument that was not for the sake of heaven, that was terrible? Zu machloket Korach v'chol adato, it's the machloket of Korach in all his congregation. Okay, so now we have to understand what's a machloket l'shem shamayim. We said it's for the sake of heaven. What does that mean? Simply stated, machloket l'shem shamayim means a division, a disagreement, various opinions being tabled. Levirur ha'emet. We want to find out, we want to discover what the truth is. What is the halacha? That's all. That's the whole agenda here. That's what's motivating us to suggest, to offer an opinion. We're not being motivated because we want kavod, honor, money. It's the Shem Shamayim for the sake of heaven. We want what's best. We want the truth. That's what the Shem Shamayim means. And therefore, the typical example of that is the machlokot of all the Tanaim and Damoraim in the Gemara. Hillel and Shammai is just used as an example because they were the ones who argued a lot. But it means any machloket of the Tanaim and Damoraim because their machlokot was Hashem Shamayim. If they said something different, because either they heard differently, they were taught differently, or their opinion was different because of whatever reason, they felt it should be different. But what was driving them, motivating them, was not kavod chaz v'shalom, it was Hashem Shamayim for the sake of heaven. So in the example of Hillel and Shammai, what they want to achieve is what is the halakha? But the halakha, they both knew what the halakha is. So it's more than just what the halakha is. They want to know which one to adapt. What's the difference? Because they both knew that the two opinions were right. It says so. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. A heavenly voice came out and said, the two are accepted by God. So in other words, the two opinions, imagine, are acceptable. Yeah. So what's the question? Well, the question, we can't adapt both. We have to adapt one. Is this the halacha or is this the halacha? So the majority of the time, the halacha was like Bet Hillel, the more lenient one. The halacha will, however, become like Bet Shammai when Mashiach comes. What does that prove? It proves that they both are right. How could they both be right? Because they both comply with heaven. They both comply with the heaven's plan. They both are therefore compatible even though they're opposites. One is yes, one is no. Black, white, tameh, tahor. So what? But they cannot both be adaptable at the same time. For some reason, Bet Hillel was adopted. His halacha most of the time, not always, was adopted as the halacha, not Bet Shammai. So that's what they wanted to know. And even though they had disagreements and differences of opinion, guess what? They still married each other. They didn't look down at the other. They even accepted the other's opinion all the time when they were wrong, right? When it was decided that the halakha is like the other one. So this shows a lot. This shows that they really care about the truth, not about their own kavod. That says a lot. Look at the attitude. Look at the atmosphere. No fighting, no yelling, no cursing. They want to know what the truth is. So what does this teach us? This teaches us that there's no problem with machloket in itself. Machloket means differences of opinion. That is acceptable. People have differences of opinion. The big question is, how do you go about showing your difference of opinion, and what is it about? That's all that matters. How you go about it, and why do you have a difference of opinion? For what? But not that there is one machloket. There is a machloket, we can't avoid it. People have differences of opinion. That's okay. It's okay to have differences of opinion. If that's all a machloket was, it's fine. But the big problem is how you go about it and why. So let's take husband and wife. Differences of opinion? Yes, very possibly, because one is a man and one is a woman, just for that alone. So what do we need to do? Well, how are you going to go about it? The most important idea on how to go about it is bedarchei shalom. Do it peacefully. Do it calmly as much as possible. Right? Quietly. Understand when you're arguing that each one is coming from a different perspective, different background perhaps, different way of looking at things. It doesn't mean that the one is wrong and the other one is right. It could be just like Hillel and Shammai, they're both right. One is a woman and one is a man's view of things. But only one opinion can be adapted. What can we do? We can't adapt both opinions. So, honey, do you want green curtains or peach curtains? One says, I like peach. The other one says, I like green. Well, let's make a compromise. Let's go for blue. Anyway, these are silly, of course. These are things that there shouldn't be arguments about. Arguments, no. But discussions, it's acceptable. People have different opinions and different tastes. What do you want? They're both acceptable. Each one sees things differently. I like this, she likes that. One person likes gefilte fish, and the other one likes kibbeh. Right? Or whatever. Right? Depending on their backgrounds. So it depends how you go about the discussion. When you go about a machloket, it's important to always bear in mind that it's very possible the other side is right. Who says you're right just because you have a different opinion? Just remember, it's possible that the other side is right. And therefore, if there's always a willingness levater, to give in, to cede, to yield, that's good. A person has to have that ability. The ability to be able to yield, to cede, to concede that the other person was right. It's very important to me that, because it is, it's a fact. The other person could be right and we're wrong. So that is all an example of L'Shem Shamayim. When you, not only is it for the good cause, you go about it in the right way. It means that you're not interested in your kavod. It means you're interested really in clarifying a situation as to what is best for a particular situation. Now let's see what is Shelo L'Shem Shamayim. Shelo L'Shem Shamayim is Korach Va'adato. Korach and his congregation. Well, what happened to Moshe? Before you said Hillel and Shammai. Here you're saying Korach and Adato. But what about, he was arguing with Moshe. Why not mention Moshe's name? Well, Moshe didn't want to have anything to do with the Machloket. He didn't ask for it. That's why his name is not mentioned. Who is the one that's making this whole Machloket? Just Korach. Korach Va'adato, by the way. Why does it say Adato? Because they were seen fighting amongst themselves too. And that in itself already shows you that they're not sincere, that they're not real. Because even amongst themselves there's already machloket. Well, that's not a good sign. Machloket Shelo L'Shem Shamayim is the typical machloket that we see in politics today. Kavod, honor, position, money, favors, back kicks. Is that, what do they call them? Kickbacks. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, all kinds of things like that. Where it's not for the good of the country, for the good of the people. How many politicians really do what's best for the people and for the country? How many leaders? They say they do, but not always. Not always. Many times not. Why? Because they're not real. They're not sincere. They care more about themselves. So in Machloket Shelo L'Shem Shamayim, what's running it, what's driving it, is personal agendas. Money, kavod, and all that. And that's really what's been driving many wars too. All the wars, kimat, almost all the wars. What's driving them? The hunger of honor, of conquering, of taking over lands, of territory, and killing others, and humiliating them, taxing them. Right? Most of the times. And then there are other times that the wars are in self-defense, or to recover the territory that was lost, that was taken from you. There are some legitimate cases of war. Then there's the war, of course, the battles that Hashem tells us to go out, to remove idol worshipping from the land of Eretz Yisrael and so forth. The war of Amalek. But in general, the history is replete with wars that all it is was cruelty and selfishness and ego and kavod and honor. And that's all, not L'Shem Shamayim. So what happens when something is L'Shem Shamayim? It endures. So falit kayem, something good will come out from it. It will endure. Something will be achieved through this machloket. Something good. She'ena L'Shem Shamayim, en so falit kayem, it will not endure. Nothing will come out of it. If anything comes out, it's disaster, destruction. En so falit kayem, in other words, nothing of kiyum, nothing that is lasting and that is good will come out of such a machloket. So why argue? Only because people have this problem with an ego. So therefore, any time that a machloket is about to start, if you know that it's not a pure machloket, you should know that this machloket will bring only destruction and will not benefit anyone, and therefore stay out of it. Stay out of it, and as much as you can, like it would be fire. And that unfortunately happens too often. A small spark can lead to a big fire. What happens many times, unfortunately, it's the wife's fault. I don't blame the woman, but the Midrash brings that as an example. We're speaking about Korach Va'adato. Korach had this wife that was an instigator, let's say. She sees him come home one day and he's bald from head to toe because he was a Levi. And to inaugurate, the Leviim were completely shaven. From head to toe, even the hair lashes. Everything. Look at you. You look like a pickle, she says. Moshe did to you. He didn't do it to everybody else, right? And he took the job for this, and he took his brother for that job, and this is how he's treating you. She started basically making fun of him and picking a fight, and that's how she instigated everything. From a little spark, turned out to be a fire. You have to be careful, really, really be careful what is driving this. Just to finish up, machloket is a real dangerous thing in general. Division, arguments, And people should not take it lightly. Machloket is terrible. Besides the sin of machloket, besides being something bad in itself, when it's not l'shem shamayim, the problem is where it leads to. It leads to sinat chinam, baseless hatred between people. It leads to lashon hara. It leads to anger. It leads to verbal abuse. It leads to public shame. It leads to revenge and holding a grudge. It leads to curses, chalila. And it could also lead to chilul Hashem, desecration of God's name, chas v'shalom. It could lead to all kinds of troubles that people will cause harm to others, whether it's in their livelihood or in their reputation. It's a terrible thing, terrible, terrible. Machloket, one has to stay away from it at all costs, at all costs. The Satan is a specialist in this area. He makes fights even amongst the religious, even amongst rabbis, unfortunately. Great people, the best. He knows how to pick a fight. He knows where to get in. He finds a crack and he widens it. And that's why the second Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. And think about it. And since we're in the generation right before the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash, the third one, we have to be extra sensitive for it. Rabbis remind us that anytime there's a machloket that is not controlled, if it's in a home, that home will be destroyed. If it's in a Bet HaKnesset, the people will eventually scatter. Machloket will eventually cause tremendous havoc. It's people underestimate it, and people like a juicy argument, but it's very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. One of the worst ones, unfortunately, is the machloket between husband and wife, and that's also, of course, has led to many, many divorces. But there's one more machloket that I feel terrible for people who are involved in that, and that is a machloket over money. A lot of time, family members, cousins, uncles, aunts, nephews, nieces, husband, wife, relatives, become very, very involved in a machloket, a big feud, a family feud, because of money, whether it's inheritance or other. And that has destroyed so many, many, many families, that they don't invite each other to the weddings and so forth. They don't talk to each other anymore just because of some silly case involving money. One has to stay cool, be very, very careful not to let that get over him. It's only money, right? Today, there's a big, big, big mitzvah to make shalom bayit as much as possible, to bring husband and wife together, to bring families together, if it's possible. It's very difficult when people are so angry at each other, especially if it's over so many years. But for those of us who see it, number one, stay away from it. Don't get involved, because it's all silly. It's all shtuyot. It's not Hashem Shamayim. It's only about money. It can't be something good. And number two, we know the consequences of where this leads. There's too many, unfortunately, examples of it all over the place, all over the history. So the more we learn about it, the more we should be sensitive to it. So, unfortunately, even though people have learned all this and they talk about it, yes, L'Shem Shamayim, it's not L'Shem Shamayim. When there's honor and money and position and possessions and properties involved in it. But when you have a strong emunah, and when you learn Torah and Musar, and you develop Yirat Shamayim, then you're able to handle this a lot better. What I'd like to say is that for people to really gather the strength to be able to control themselves and stay off of this, they have to remember what the goal is. And the goal is achava, v'shalom, v're'ut, brotherliness, friendship, right? Love, respect. That is the greatest ultimate goal of what we need to achieve amongst ourselves and amongst our families. More than how much money you're going to give him and how much is he going to inherit and things like that. That a family stays together, that's the most beautiful beracha. If their children and grandchildren are also together, even though they're numbering in the hundreds, I think that's a dream come true. To me, I think that's one of the most valuable things a parent can ask his children and grandchildren after he leaves this world. Stay together, no matter what the cost is. Do for each other, help each other. Always. You're one family. And if that happens in one family, then B'ezrat Hashem it will happen in many other families. And it will happen in all of Am Yisrael. Mm-hmm. So that's where it has to begin somewhere. But people who value and worship money are so far from this. They're going to be machloket after machloket all their life with neighbors. I'm going to sue you in court. What's that coming from? Not from shalom, not from l'shem shamayim. It's coming from ego, sinat chinam, right? Look what's happening. But if a person develops the right hashkafa, the right outlook towards life, what's really important, he will come to realize that Hashem wants peace. Hashem wants peace and wants us to pursue peace. And Hashem yivarech bezat Hashem et amo v'shalom. Thank you.
Amen.